how far I'm gonna read because this book doesn't have like chapters. It has parts. It's like part 1. I don't even know when part 2 ends. I haven't read it. I haven't read the whole thing. So I guess we're just sailing off into the night, friends. Boy, Larry, does Atari have a game for you. Some of what I just said made you think of a game. Ten more minutes? Are you guys bored? I've only been reading for an hour, right? Like less than an hour because I was really slow. I'll read for like, I guess 10 more minutes. That's maybe right. But you guys still have a ways to go to catch up with me. More. Good. Blah, blah, blah. Frank Chalmers, you're so hot. He speaks 5 languages. OMG. Women, allies, men, dangerous. She recalled only one moment, when she had seen further into him than the skin. And that had been back in Antarctica. After the thermal engineer had cracked and been sent home. Sorry, north. Hey, no spoilers, okay? Back in Antarctica. After the thermal engineer had cracked and been sent north, news of his replacement had come down. And when it was announced, yeah, Maya chapter. I already explained that to chat. And when the thermal engineer had cracked and been sent north, news of his replacement had come down, and when it was announced, everyone was quite surprised and excited to hear that it was going to be John Boone himself, even though he had certainly received more than the maximum radiation dosage on his previous expedition. You know, you don't want to exceed your maximum radiation dosage. While the evening room was still buzzing with the news, Maya had seen Chalmers come in and be told of it. And he had jerked his head around to stare at his informant. And then for a fraction of a second, she had seen a flash of fury. A flash so fast, it was almost a subliminal event. But it had made her more attentive to him. And certainly he and John Boone had an odd relationship. It was difficult for Chalmers, of course. 3.6 Rontgen. Not great, not terrible. I found out recently, I keep waiting for them, I swear to God, the first time I read this book, they said REM like 8 times. And I feel like they haven't said it once, now that I'm reading it out loud. And I don't get to explain what REM stands for. It's Rontgen equivalent man, which is the equivalent dosage that a man receives in a year from like the sun or whatever, I don't know. Or from like an x-ray, I don't know. Oh, it's a year Rontgen equivalent man. I don't even know what it stands for anymore. I don't know the definition. It's not just rapid eye movement. It's Rontgen equivalent man, which is a unit of measurement of how much radiation you're receiving in an area. And I can't remember why it's significant, or like not why it's significant, but I'm like, what's the unit? I'm like, it's like 1 Rontgen is like a year of chest x-rays, right? Is that it? One Rontgen is like a year of chest x-rays. Or something like that. That's probably as close as I'm gonna get. Rads per man per year. Man on the moon. Right. Okay. So, I was not correct, but, you know, we're not even there yet. His maximum radiation dosage on his previous expedition. While Frank was furious, but it had made her more attentive to him. Often used for the dosages commonly encountered, such as the amount of radiation received from medical x-rays and background sources. Right. Okay, it's the amount of radiation you receive in a year, and that's why it's important. Like 3.6 Rontgen from the Chernobyl show. When he's like 3.6, not bad. Not great. That's 3 years worth of radiation just like in the air, like, or around you at that moment. So you're getting like that much radiation currently. Which is why you don't want to exceed, a dosage. Typically you want one. Just 3 years, worth of 3.6 years worth of radiation. Just 100,000. Okay, anyways, I don't know. You look it up, find out for yourself. It's just the one dose, actually. It was difficult for Chalmers, of course. He was the Americans' official leader, and even had the title captain. But Boone, with his blonde good looks and the strange presence of his accomplishment, certainly had more natural authority. He seemed the real American leader. And Frank Chalmers, something like an overactive executive officer, doing Boone's unspoken bidding. That could not be comfortable. They were old friends, Maya had been told when she asked, but she saw few signs of it herself, even watching closely. They seldom talked to each other in public, and did not visit each other in private. Thus, when they were together, she watched them more closely than ever, without ever consciously considering why. The natural logic of the situation just seemed to demand it. If they had been back at Glove Cosmos, it would have made strategic sense to drive a wedge between them. But she didn't think of it that way here. There was a lot that Maya didn't think about consciously. She watched, though. And one morning, Janet Bly-Levin wore her video glasses into D Hall for breakfast. She was a principal reporter for American television, and often she wove her way through the ship wearing her vid glasses, looking around and talking the commentary. Fucking streamer. Streamer. I'm pointing at myself, but you can't tell because I'm a streamer and I'm pointing into my OBS. Streamer. She walks around often, weaving her way through the ship, wearing her vid glasses, looking around and talking the commentary, collecting stories and transmitting them back home, where they would be, as Arcady put it, pre-digested and vomited back into that baby bird consensus. It was nothing new, of course. Media attention was a familiar part of every astronaut's life, and during the selection process they had been scrutinized more than ever. Now, however, they were the raw material for programs magnitudes more popular than any space program had been before. Millions watched them as the ultimate soap opera, and this bothered some of them. So when Janet settled at the end of the table, wearing those stylish spectacles with the optical fibers in the frame, there were a few groans. And at the other end of the table, Anne Claiborne and Saxe Russell were arguing, oblivious to any of them. It'll take years to find out what we have there, Saxe. Decades. There's as much land on Mars as on Earth. With a unique geology and chemistry, the land has to be thoroughly studied before we can start changing it. We'll change it just by landing. Russell brushed aside. Russell brushed aside Anne's objections as if they were spiderwebs in his face. Deciding to go to Mars is like the first phrase of a sentence, and the whole sentence says, Veni, vidi, vici. Oh, actually, she finished that. Okay. We'll change it just by landing. Deciding to go to Mars is like the first phrase of a sentence, and the whole sentence says, Veni, vidi, vinci. Russell shrugged. If you want to put it that way. You're the weenie, Saxe, Anne said, lip curled with irritation. She was a broad-shouldered woman with wild brown hair. A geologist with strong views. Difficult in argument. Look, Mars is its own place. You can play your climate-shifting games back on Earth if you want. They need the help. Or try it on Venus. But you can't just wipe out a 3 billion year old planetary surface. Russell rubbed away more spiderwebs. It's dead, he said simply. Besides, it's not really our decision. It'll be taken out of our hands. None of these decisions will be taken out of our hands, Arkady put in sharply. Janet looked from speaker to speaker, taking it all in. Anne was getting agitated, raising her voice. Maya glanced around and saw that Frank didn't like the situation. But if he interrupted, it would give away to millions the fact that he didn't want the colonists arguing in front of them. Instead, he looked across the table and caught Boone's eye. Boone's gaze. There was an exchange of expressions between the two. So quick it made there was an exchange of expressions between the two. So quick it made Maya blink. Boone said, "When I was there before, I got the impression that it was already Earth-like. Except 200 degrees Kelvin," Russell said. "Sure, but it looked like the Mojave, or the Dry Valleys. The first time I looked around on Mars, I found myself keeping an eye out for one of those mummified seals we saw in the Dry Valleys." And so on. Janet turned to him, and Anne, looking disgusted. Janet turned to him, and Anne, looking disgusted, picked up her coffee and left. Afterward, Maya concentrated, trying to recall the looks, Boone's and, oh my God. Power through, we can do this. Afterward, Maya concentrated, trying to recall the looks Boone and Chalmers had exchanged. They had been like something from a code, or the private languages invented by identical twins. Thank you. Yeah, this book isn't really meant to be read out loud, but it's actually kind of fun too. Most books aren't meant to be read out loud, isn't that right? Great. And I mean, so far I've read harder books, to read out loud. This one's actually just kind of fun. The weeks passed. Thank you, Sakai, for 6 months. The weeks passed, and the days each began with a leisurely breakfast. Mid-mornings were far busier. Everyone had a schedule, although some were fuller than others. Frank's was packed, which was the way he liked it. A maniacal blur of activity. But the necessary work was not really all that great. They had to keep themselves alive and in shape, and keep the ship running, and keep preparing for Mars. Ship maintenance ranged from the intricacy of programming or repairs to the simplicity of moving supplies out of storage or taking trash to the recyclers. The biosphere team spent the bulk of the time on the farm, which occupied large parts of Taurus's C, E, and F, and everyone aboard had farm chores. Most enjoyed this work, and some even returned in their free hours. Everyone was on doctor's orders to spend 3 hours a day on treadmills, escalators, running wheels, or using weight machines. These hours were enjoyed or endured, or despised, depending on the temperament. But even those who claimed to despise them finished their exercises in noticeably, even measurably, better moods. Beta endorphins are the best drugs, Michelle Duval would say. Which is lucky since we don't have any others, Arcady would reply. Arcady. I can't do this guy. Beta endorphins are the best drug, Michelle Duval would say. Which is lucky since we don't have any others, Arcady would reply. Oh, there's caffeine. Puts me to sleep. Alcohol gives me a headache. Procaine, Darvon, morphine. Morphine? In the medical supplies. Not for general use. Arcady smiled. Maybe I'd better get sick. The engineers, including Maya, spent many mornings in training simulations. These took place on the backup bridge in Taurus B, which had the latest in image synthesizers. The simulations were so sophisticated that there was little visible difference between them and the act itself. this did not necessarily make them interesting. The standard orbital insertion approach, simulated weekly, was dubbed the Mantra Run, and became quite a bore to every conceivable flight crew. The Mantra Run. The standard orbital insertion approach became quite a bore to every conceivable flight crew. But sometimes, even boredom was preferable to the alternatives. Arkady was their training specialist, and he had a perverse talent for designing problem runs so hard that they often killed everybody. These runs were strangely unpleasant experiences and did not make Arkady popular among his victims. He mixed problem runs with mantra runs randomly, but more and more often they were problem runs. They would approach Mars, and red lights would flash, sometimes with sirens, and they were in trouble again. Once, they stuck a planetesimal weighing struck. And they were in trouble again. Once, they struck a planetesimal weighing approximately 15 grams, leaving a large flaw in the heat shield. Sachs-Russell had calculated that their chances of hitting anything larger than a gram were about 1 in every 7,000 years of travel. But nevertheless, there they were. Emergency. Adrenaline pouring through them even as they derided the very idea of it. Rushing up to the hub and into the EVA suits, going out to fill the pothole before they hit the Martian atmosphere and burned to a crisp. And halfway there, Arkady's voice came over their intercoms. "Not fast enough! All of us are dead." But that was a simple one. Others. The ship, for instance, was guided by a fly-by-wire system, meaning that the pilots fed instructions to flight computers, which translated them into the actual thrusts needed to achieve the desired results. This was how it had to be, because when approaching a gravitational mass like Mars at their speed, one simply cannot feel or intuit what burns would achieve the desired effects. So none of them were flyers in the sense of a pilot flying a plane. Nevertheless, Arkady frequently blew the entire massively redundant system just as they were reaching a critical moment, which failure, Russell said, had about 1 in 10 billion chance of happening, and they had to take over and command all the rockets manually. Mechanically. Watching the monitors and an orange on black visual image of Mars bearing down on them. And they could either go long and skip off into deep space and die a lingering death, or go short and crash into the planet and die instantly. And if the latter, they got to watch it, right down to the simulated 120 clicks per second final smash. Or it might be a mechanical failure. Main rockets, stabilizing rockets, computer hardware or software, heat shield deployment, all of them had to work perfectly during the approach, and failures of these systems were the most likely of all, in the range, Sachs said, though others contested his risk assessment methods, of 1 in every 10,000 approaches. So they would do it again, and red lights would flash, and they would groan and beg for a mantra run, even as they partly welcomed the new challenge. When they managed to survive a mechanical failure, they were tremendously pleased. It could be the high point of the week. Once, John Boone successfully aerobraked by hand with a single main rocket functioning, hitting the safe millisecond of arc at the only possible speed. No one could believe it. Blind luck, Boone said, grinning widely as the deed was talked about at dinner. Most of Arcady's problem runs ended in failure, however, meaning death for all. Simulated or not, it was hard not to be sobered by these experiences. And after that, irritated with Arcady for inventing them. One time, they repaired every monitor in the bridge just in time to see the screens register a hit by a small asteroid, which sheared through the hub and killed them all. Another time, Arcady, as part of the navigation team, made an error and instructed the computers to increase the ship's spin rather than decrease it. Pinned to the floor by 6 Gs, he cried in mock horror. And they had to crawl on the floor for half an hour, pretending to rectify the error. While weighing a half-ton each. When they succeeded, Arcady leaped off the floor and began pushing them away from the control monitor. "What the hell are you doing?" Maya yelled. I'm so glad. Okay, When they succeeded, Arcady leapt off the floor and began pushing them away from the control monitor. "What the hell are you doing?" Maya yelled. "He's gone crazy," Janet said. "He's simulated going crazy," Nadja corrected her. "We have to figure out," doing an end run around Arcady, "how to deal with someone on the bridge going insane." Which was no doubt true. But they could see the whites of Arcady's eyes all the way around, and there wasn't a trace of recognition in him as he silently assaulted them. It took all 5 of them to restrain him, and Janet and Phyllis Boyle were hurt by his sharp elbows. Well, he said at dinner afterward, grinning lopsidedly, as he was growing a fat lip. "What if it happens? We're under pressure up there. And the approach will be the worst of all. What if someone cracks?" He turned to Russell, and the grin grew wider. "What are the chances of that, eh?" And he began to sing a Jamaican song in a Slavic Caribbean accent. "Pressure drop, oh, oh, pressure going to drop on you." Wow. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. So they kept trying. Handling the problem runs as seriously as they could. Even the attack by Martian natives, or the decoupling of Taurus H, caused by explosive bolts installed by mistake when the ship was built. Or the last-minute veering of Phobos out of its orbit. Phobos is a moon, or the moon of Mars. I love it. They didn't do a vampire simulation, so I think that, there's a lot of book left. Red Mars, Arcady, what does he know? Deimos is the other. Handling the problem runs as seriously as they could, even the attack by Martian natives or the decoupling of Taurus H caused by explosive bolts installed by mistake when the ship was built, or the last-minute veering of Phobos out of its orbit. Dealing with the more implausible scenarios sometimes took on a kind of surreal dark humor, or black humor. Sometimes took on a kind of surreal black humor. And Arcady replayed some of his videotapes as after-dinner entertainment, which sometimes got people launched into the air with laughter. But the plausible problem runs, they kept on coming, morning after morning. And despite the solutions, despite the protocols for finding solutions, there was that sight, time after time. The red planet, rushing at them at an unimaginable 40,000 kilometers an hour, until it filled the screen, and the screen went white, and small black letters appeared on it. You died. Collision. And I believe that is where we shall end today. Thank you. Wasted.